What we're using is really fun gaming, interactive, using the hands and walking the player. If they have no microbiology, medical background whatsoever, we walk them through learning about the individual microbes in gameplay.
Welcome to The Growth Stack, the show where we explore how great companies grow smarter and faster through better technology and talent. Today, I'm joined by Dr. Jane Harrington, CEO and co-founder of MedMicroMaps, an NSF-backed startup turning microbiology and STEM into immersive visual, spatial, tactile experiences in VR and mobile. Jane, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Of course. So I like to start these off by introducing you to the listener and give me around your background and how you came to start or found MedMicroMaps.
It's fantastic. I'd absolutely love to disclose. I love science. I knew I wanted to be a scientist about whenever I was 8 years old when my parents gave me a microscope. I went to Magnet High School whenever I went into grade 9, and I love microbiology. I love the microscopic world. It really is a passion that started very early. Getting into academia, becoming a professor and educator, it is very much was a driven. I knew whenever I was 16 years old, I wanted to be a professor. And so in my experience of my love of science, and I've taught at mostly medical schools in the Caribbean for 12 years, but I've done a lot of outreach in elementary school. And I really realized about science is intimidating. And so I'm dedicated to my students that I'll do anything to help them learn. And when the pandemic hit, realized the tools that are available, they just do not work in this modern age. So I left academia a year and a half ago, and now I'm doing full-time entrepreneurship and really using technology to make science so fun. So that's my journey in a nutshell.
So why MedMicroMaps? Why there's many things you could do using your background. Why MedMicroMaps?
A core part of it actually it gets to my daughter. So my daughter's 16. She has got a primary immunodeficiency. So she doesn't make the antibody in the respiratory tract. So she gets sick frequently. And having taught around 8,000 doctors and nurses, I know what they know. I know what they don't know. And I know from my personal experiences, and then also with my daughter, about there's a big disconnect between what's learned in textbooks and on exams versus in the real world. And so I was interested in education for, again, for a long time. Technology, it's fun, it's creative. And so this is a way that I can constantly evolve for my way of really sharing my knowledge. But of course, whenever the pandemic hit, I keep coming back to that because that started MedMicroMaps. It was fall of 2020. I was in Grenada in the Caribbean, and I was teaching to my Zoom dot. I had around 800 students across the globe. Whenever I was teaching respiratory infections to year 2 medical students. So COVID was happening. People were dying. My students were in the classroom. My COVID students were not in the classroom, so I will always make mistakes. And they wanted to know, there's so much misinformation. I've been teaching coronavirus for 10 years. So I was reading literature, 5 to 20 articles a week. I'm an expert. And so whenever it was time for my lectures, I called up the other professors and I said, are you teaching this? So the pharmacologists, the clinical skills, the pathologists, none of them are teaching it because it's not on the test. And so I had the job to organize my 7 hours of lectures to make room for this new, completely new virus, this new disease. And I actually, that was the core for it. And I was at home and I printed out the microbes. I organized them in a spatial arrangement based on how they are in my head. And I needed a way to convey it via e-learning, via the computer, via Zoom. And that is really a major challenge of pre-pandemic, where we were in classrooms, there were whiteboards, we had books, versus post-pandemic, where there's such a huge shift to virtual learning. That's really fall of 2020 was, it was really a major challenge that I had, and using technology to improve learning experiences.
Now, you started this, I believe, with your husband. Now, my understanding is he's more of the technical side of things, and how did you get him involved? Does he love science as well, or he just loves technology? How did that come about?
I think they're fantastic that our blend of my really advanced science knowledge versus the general audience. I've been together with my husband for 18 and a half years. We met in graduate school. He has no interest in my topic. He doesn't know what I'm talking about vast majority of the time, even though we've been together. His background, he was a master carpenter in very fancy houses. So his attention to detail and mathematics, absolutely doing designs by hand. When we moved to the Caribbean, he shifted to commercial photography. So art, Photoshop, and like really creative technology. And it was during the pandemic that we were home together, and I was trying to change the status quo. I was trying to really push the technology with video, with interactive, of really getting into how we can use these tools. And that was not received very well. Disrupting the status quo in medical education, it's resistant. And this is 2021. My husband said, no one's taking you seriously. And so he
Mm.
self-taught or self-learned Unity, Blender. He saw the incredible potential for spatial computing. And so for 2 years, he dedicated himself to learning the skill to build my world.
Were you nervous if you'd be able to accomplish it?
I get that
Maybe he
question a
shouldn't
lot. Are you
listen.
nervous when you're scared? You never feel you're scared, and that actually has never been part of the equation. I love challenges, and so we got our first headset Quest Rift, the Oculus Quest Rift, in 2019, and that's when we had the anatomy, so the holo anatomy. There was a nerve, like a nerve system app. And it just was so clear that this is the way for improving education. And so the really that, I would say 20 to 2022 when I was at home, fear has never been a part of it. I will say there's been some fear with being an entrepreneur, but no, I have a very, very clear vision for improving education. And so I personally have not been afraid for the innovation. Um, Entrepreneurship is scary, but not for the innovation.
Okay, sure. So, who is your customer at this point? Is it um are you working with like government agencies in some way so that they can, I don't know, give you funding? Are you contacting medical schools, high schools, middle schools?
Yes.
Who's your
So
customer?
so for the past year, we have been grant funded. So we received the National Science Foundation SBIR. That's the Small Business Innovation Research Grant, and that actually was for our phase one development. So from ideation for our VR app to delivery to the MetaQuest Alpha channel. And so in 9 months, we are able to raise those 360,000 grant funds. So
Amazing.
at this particular point in time, yeah, we're bootstrapping. We are not in market yet, but what we are doing is going out grassroots connections to STEM programs. And that's been a big change. Medical schools, we do demos. However, they're, as I said, resistance to something new. They're a little resistant versus the Clubhouse Network is across the globe. They're in Denver. And so we go in person, and it's really the adolescents who are the population for our users. And so we're designing for the younger generation because they're the ones who are really taking to virtual reality. And so our customers right now, we're aiming to be in public release in January, and we're targeting educators and parents. So we really
Yeah.
free to play. It's going to be subscription for advanced a knowledge base.
Yeah, I imagine younger kids, middle school age, maybe, who are not, I mean, I wasn't that big into this type of science. I was some of some chemistry experiments, I don't know if you remember back in the day, Mr. Wizard that was on
Yep.
TV. I was fascinated by that, but this makes, microbiology or biology more interesting. So why don't we take a look at your software?
Yeah, I would like to assert
Yes.
if you ask a population of 16-year-olds, so
Yeah.
my daughter's 16, so she's a junior in high school, do you have any interest in microbiology? I'm going to be surprised if anyone gives an answer yes. But if you ask, do you like gaming? It's
Of
something like
course.
3/4. So I just want to get that clarification for what our experience is.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's see if we can make this happen. Put this one here. Why don't you talk us through?
So in our gameplay, it's a Unity-based app. And right now, we
Hmm.
have 8 viruses. So we have coronavirus, we have HIV, we have herpes, influenza. So these are viruses that general public have heard of. But in the gameplay, they have different sizes. We actually have color coding once you get into the bacteria and the fungi. And so adenovirus, that's actually causes pink eye. And so what we're using is really fun gaming, interactive, using the hands and walking the player. If they have no microbiology, medical background whatsoever, we walk them through learning about the individual microbes in gameplay. And so as you grab the microbe, the voice will pop up. And so the Dr. Jane avatar and tell you the adenovirus causes pink eye. And you throw it, you get it correct. And so I really challenge about that misunderstanding that a person's not smart enough to learn this subject. We don't have the right tools versus a 15-year-old who loves gaming can come in here and stepwise with that visual tactile. So using the hands, I love using my hands a lot. That's going to walk them
Right.
through a subject that doesn't have to be that intimidating.
If you look at these different things, they are showing different virus cells. Is that
Yeah,
is that
they're called
correct?
a virion vocabulary. They are
Okay.
the extracellular infectious agent. All of these viruses,
Okay.
all of these assets are real. This is actually what their structures are. This is really how they look. And so we use microscopic data to model these assets. So these characters, what have you. So that is the causative agent of pink eye. And that's really what it looks like. It's got little spikes off of it.
So, in what we're
Same
looking
thing.
at
Yeah.
right now, there's different, that word you said out there, and
Viruses.
they're trying to
Yeah.
grab the
Legacy
one
virus.
for the adenovirus in that ring.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yep. And we start with adenovirus because it's an A. So we use alphabetical, we use
Nice.
sizing. Yeah. Yeah. So the adenovirus, it was isolated in the adenoid tissue. That's where the name came. It's the A, it's the first one. And so you grab it. There's no instructions for the gameplay because our kids, I mean, the teens, they'll jump right in there. They know because they'll grab the wrong one, such as HIV, and the circle turned red versus you grab the
Yeah.
adenovirus and
Okay.
it turned green.
So now, if we move on, we have this quiz here, and from a previous chat we had, you mentioned that this was a key part of what you've built.
Yes.
Is so.
So
Once you
in the,
talk us through.
whenever you have, we call them serious games. And so when you have just gaming aspect of it without the educational motivation, it doesn't please the parents or the educators. It pleases the user.
Right.
Versus if you have any sort of tech that is very education focused and maybe it's got a little mini game, that pleases the parents, but they really have to have that balance. And so for our app or experience, you start off and you learn some pretty basic information that it causes pink eye, and then you get leveled up. And so if you successfully pass the quiz, which we're going to do a submit, then it's going to be fireworks and you get to move to the next level. That's going to be our next virus that is which is coronavirus. As
Nice.
you'll see. but it is using gaming and output. So again, knowledge that is two-dimensional, so text, that is going to be a relationship between the educator and the learner. So the educator, they can put their quiz questions, and the educator can have students. So one headset can be used multiple times, Johnny, Mary, Joe, and then the students will, as a learner player, I use those interchangeably. They'll
Yeah.
go through and say, one of them's like, I don't really care about it. I got one wrong. We need to have a minimum to get to the next level. This person got all the way 100%. They're good on this material. Let's give them more. Let's give them the bacteria. Versus another student says, I'm really struggling on the biology of my 4 viruses. So it was going to go our adenovirus, it's going to go coronavirus, it's going to go influenza virus. And then the teacher, after letting all the students have to play the game, see if they get to the next level or not, it's not required. And then the teacher gets the output. And so the output, then they can say, oh, you know what? I need to remediate for this one student. They need a little bit more work, or they might need an extra sheet. And so that's what our design is really for, a dynamic conversation between what material knowledge does the instructor or parent, because we'll give them the power as well, put it into the gameplay. The individual, the player, they're going to go through and they're like, I don't care about this one. I just want to skip through, versus I mastered this and I want something more challenging. Then the teacher or parent, it's going to get that information. So we're designing this really for this back and forth between two-dimensional text files, PDFs, PowerPoints, which is what our standard information is. And then you have the gameplay. So the user's like, oh, I get to grab things. And
Right.
then the educator or parent, they're going to get that output and say, hey, I need this to give a recording gameplay on their co-working space. Coming back to the key design between gameplay knowledge is also, that's going to be good for the advanced learners, because say, for instance, someone's an undergraduate and they're studying for the MCAT exam, so the entrance exam for medical
Yep.
school.
Yep.
They're going to get the report and they now get to integrate it with their files. And this is also going to have a web access. And so it's really that interaction between our two-dimensional learning, text-based learning, the actual experience, and we say 4D because it's 3D and you get to touch it, move it, and then you get to export it as your knowledge bank. And that's really something that is truly innovative about our approach.
So I have a 10-year-old. And if I think back to when I was 10 years old, a long time ago, computers weren't much of a thing. I think it was like the Commodore was the big computer. So that was not going to be, taken home like kids have today, where they get a Chromebook to work on. My homework was always on paper. And now kids, they get a Chromebook. They're doing some of their homework on that Chromebook, obviously. And so this seems like the next evolution of that, where we're now providing a more immersive, a more interactive, something that's for kids who aren't too interested, allows them to get more interested because they're more involved in it. They could see it, they could touch it, they're using more of their senses. It really seems like that next evolution.
Yes, that is backed by extensive studies, especially when we went in person all the time, pandemic 100% virtual.
Yeah.
I want to touch on the hands.
Yeah.
And so when we learn something, you see it comes in here,
Right.
you hear it, and this is
Right.
our basic knowledge, so vocabulary. But it's not until you speak it that you say, okay, I hear it, I speak it. So now this is getting into your short-term memory. And this is where a lot of our knowledge is focused for education assessment. And that is like flashcards where I see it, I hear it, I see it, I hear it. Short-term, fantastic. But one aspect of in-person is body language. So a study was done in a classroom and auditorium, And they had students, and this is whenever this is really pre smartphones. The lecturer was on the front of the stage with the lights on, and you could see the body, you could see the nonverbal communication. Versus they did the control study, and they did it really well controlled with 2 classes
Okay.
before and after. They turned the lights off. They turned the lights off, and you lost the three-dimensional body language, the expression, the forward, backward, especially when we're talking about non-native English speakers or neurodivergent. I'm using my mouth quite
Yeah.
exaggerated. Zoom, you lose all of
Yeah,
that.
absolutely.
You lose depth, you lose the hands, and most people have the lighting's not so great.
Right.
That will not generate long-term retention. Also, handwriting,
Interesting.
writing. There's something about neuromuscular involvement. So if I have a number or a shopping list that I type in my phone, my brain does not connect that. Versus if I physically write it on a piece of paper, what it's doing is you're getting a neuromuscular connection. And so for the studies of Zoom versus metaverse and tactile interaction, when you get the tactile, you're engaging your neuromuscular and it's coming to your long-term memory. So again, I study learning.
I'm fascinated by that. I mean, I think back to when I was in university and no one had a laptop just listening, certainly with an AI note taker, right? And I had to write a lot of stuff down to capture what the teacher was saying. And my mother forced me to take typing when I was in high school. Thank God, because now I could type and not look and look away and do all these things, and I could type pretty fast, certainly much faster than I could write. And I find that myself, if I'm typing, it's like my fingers operate disconnected from my brain, kind of a thing. Very differently than if I'm writing it myself. But you can't really read what I write. But
I want to comment on controlled studies. So my last term year
yeah,
has
go
been
ahead.
educational research. And so I really study about the science of learning. Clear cut, typing notes versus writing notes. Those who wrote notes physically had better long-term retention. So I just wanted to have that clarification. But the reality is the amount of information we have to process, it becomes too difficult. I have dysgraphia.
Mm,
I have trouble physically writing. I have arthritis. I cannot, but what I can do is type. And typing's obsolete, honestly. It's coming obsolete for our kids. They're just talk to type AI.
yeah.
The things, cursive handwriting, all of those tools that we used a generation ago, and even typing. I took typing classes as well. I watch my daughter. She's not going to need it in 5 years. Like, it's just not. So how can we use the human interaction of writing? Again, how can we engage the body in our future world? Talk to text, AI integration. How can we really integrate it? And that's where the immersive technologies come in. That is going to
So
allow us to use our hands.
curious on your thoughts. Are we headed for somewhere maybe not so good if we're going to this approach? We use AI more to look things up and research. When Google came around, it really became everywhere, and now the vocabulary came, hey, just Google it. We didn't have to remember as much because you could quickly find the answer. Are we headed somewhere maybe where there's a lot of benefits, but maybe as individuals we just don't know as much?
My advocacy is a global movement called Tech for Good. Tech for Good. Sometimes it's a four
Okay.
letter, it's a hashtag. And there are those of us who are educators, technology, artists, and we believe in using these tools for the benefit of the learner, of the society.
Hmm.
And so if you ask internet, is that good or bad? You can debate that ever. Smartphones,
Right.
are they good or bad? again, it really has to do with use cases. With AI, absolutely, there's a time and a place for it. Using it all the time for your thought process, that's really, studies are clear that it's debilitating our young learners because we need to develop the prefrontal cortex, especially with adaptive learning. So, English second language, neurodivergent. The tools are great, but not for the thought and critical thinking. It might be for the organizing. It might be for short tasking.
Mm,
For me, my note taking, I'm not doing that anymore. Spatial computing, spatial learning, that's really, really where I like to be. Like the movement is how can we use spatial augmented reality? That's like your phone of Pokemon Go. Extended
right.
reality is like
Yep.
I've got my tablet, I've got my headset, smart glasses, and so I see great potential. I mean, it's my mission, and so it's
Right.
not
All
simple
right.
to say good or bad. It's about potential and how it's used.
Okay. So let's change gears a little bit. I want to talk about a little bit of the technology from your understanding. So you said you got the with the Oculus and you started going, you saw what that can do, and so you started down this path. You want to share a little bit more about the technology you're
Yeah,
using?
I will. This is a good opportunity to clarify about the vocabulary because there was a
Okay.
big surge in the 2018. The Hollow, which was a Microsoft product, the Oculus Rift came out, which became affordable. So these
Hmm.
technologies have been in development for 2 decades. And virtual reality, that's 100%. You put on something very heavy, bulky, and the cameras weren't great. And so when we travel around with our headsets and people go, I can't do that, I get motion sickness. Most of us do. It's about 40% of women. And so the really major leap, the leap that's happened in the last 2 years was the Oculus Quest 3. So it's now the Meta Quest because it's Meta Oculus. It's called pass through. And so you can see that in our gameplay that you put the headset on, which will get lighter and cheaper, and you
Yeah.
can see everything. So the brain's like, I'm in my world. I can see 90% of my real world, and I'm inserting something new. I'm interacting with something new.
Right.
That is really where the technological innovation has happened recently. Oculus Quest 3 is $299, so it became a good price point. And then also the generative AI in the last year, the capabilities for generative AI have it is accelerated my industry. So I could not be doing what I'm doing now 3 years ago.
Are you guys using AI at all in the way that, now the chatbots, you have an issue with your cable bill, you could go and the chatbots on there are getting much better. We have AI that's organizing your calendar. Um it's we have AI that's learning how you shop and things that people like. You're buying this thing on Amazon. It's being able to learn and present you things that you might be interested in. Are you guys using AI? Does AI play into what you're doing right now? Will it play
Yeah.
into it in the future?
Yeah, the number one caveat for us is security. Safety and security. I absolutely talk about that a lot with again our parents and educators. And so a lot of the open AI models and this predictive and this gathering data, that is not feasible for when you're talking about a student population. It's unethical. And so for
Hmm.
our AI development, we use Copilot, ChatGPT, Gemini. They're all a little bit different, so they're never perfect. We use it a lot for coding. We use it a lot for scripting. So I'm working in the Horizons
Okay.
world, and I say, okay, I have this asset, and I want it to do something. I want it to bounce. I want it to uh, give sparkles. And so for us to hand do that 10 years ago, it was be very tedious. I'm not a coder. But now we can say, hey, make this run smoothly. So we use that frequently, but in our app We do not have OpenAI because what I was talking about with student performance, with the student interaction, we want that privacy kept to the educator. We want that privacy kept to the parent. And so we do in our app right now, we are being so conservative about student safety, about security, because that becomes a safe learning environment. Absolutely. With the metaverse, it's a lot of bad stuff out there, bots, cursing, we get the slop all the time. And so we're prioritizing the safe learning environment for our app. And so we use it in development right now, but we really are, for us to have a conversational AI in our gameplay experience, we're working towards that, but the infrastructure has to be put in place for security.
Got it. So if I look, shifting gears again back to your company as a company, is it just you and your husband? Do you guys have a staff?
Right now, it is a mom and pop shop. And so we're bootstrapping
Okay.
in between grants or going to revenue or venture capital. We're trying it all. And so when we had the National Science Foundation funding, yes, absolutely, we worked with developers. Our major collaboration was with Dr. James Hudson, who is a professor of AI at Lindenwood University. And so we connected with him, one of his graduates, Jason Savalas, who is a core part of this team. This is a passion project. So our families go, we've been traveled together. And so Dr. James Hudson, we employ his students. And so we had student intern, Tiffany Varner has been our part-time employee until our grant ran out. And so we have had collaborators, we've had contractors. So I definitely, our assets, our gameplay, our coding, we really are pulling in the younger generations. Student interns,
Got it.
they have the perspective that we need because we're not designing this for a boomer or Gen X myself. We're designing it for the younger generations. Yeah, that they've absolutely been a part of our team.
So as in 2020, when you're coming up with this, you're seeing the issues with the remote learning and where this could go. How far along are you in that journey?
I would say that the MedMicroMaps, like the full dream of the open world, like a Minecraft world,
Yeah.
we are on par for idealistically about 2 years. And so for our alpha release, it's like one scene. We've got 8 viruses. And so for like our microbe assets, I also just want to clarify all of our microbes, those are designed by hand. Those are really AI cannot make those, not yet. And so we have got
Okay.
22 microbes right now for the phase 1. Our full set is 250. And so the full experience, the book, that's what our learning model is for, board ready infectious disease. And that is it's going to take a user about 10 years of our gameplay to truly master the whole system. So I would say we are for the app development, all goes as planned. We're about 2 years for the full comprehensive 250 microbes, high level. Really, we estimate about 1,000 hours in our gameplay
Wow.
to become a master of that.
Wow. All right. So I understand that plan. What challenges are you facing today? What's your biggest challenges? Is it the funding to then take on more talent to then build more? Is it
I don't want to bore the audience about the challenges of new startup funding. I'm very resilient, and partnerships are great, and then us going to revenue. I would say the challenge for me personally is the adjust of the language, and so I was been working here in
okay?
medical school, very high level. So strep throat. So strep throats are one of our first storylines. So if you say, I have a sore throat and it's caused by strep and I take an antibiotic, that's a universal experience. Almost all of us have that. Certainly parents
Right.
would care about that. Versus the patient has acute pharyngitis with a purulent exudate caused by a gram-positive cocci that's beta hemolytic. That's medical language. And so my share of
Yeah.
speaking that language, and it's very intimidating, that I need to meet the learner. I need to meet my adolescents, my teenagers, my general audience,
Right.
and say, hey, this is not an intimidating science. This can be really fun and interactive. And so that's become a personal stepping away from Dr. Harrington, the lecturer who had 700 students in an auditorium listening to my every words, versus up going into high schools, middle schools, and saying, hey, you want to play? That's really that is my process, and that is really I'm finding a barrier for getting our message out.
Got it.
I often get, well, you're a microbiologist, I'm not that smart, and I say, oh, I want to change that. Someone told you you're not that smart, and they were wrong. You are that smart.
Right. Okay. So as we're coming to a close here, what is the biggest takeaway that you want to share with people? Maybe about your business, about your tech, anything.
Really changing the perspective of the joy of science, the fun of science. So whenever I do outreach, you go into a grade 3, so they're like 8 years old, and we do hands-on and we have fun. It's so much fun. And then along the way, it just becomes multiple choice questions. And those of us with HD
Yeah.
learning disabilities, we're told at some point, you're not that smart. And it closes up the possibility for going into sciences. And that's something I'm like, I put the headset on a 15-year-old. They learn it like this. If they can learn Pokemon, they can learn this subject. And so my takeaway
Yeah. Right.
is opening up opening up the mind, opening up your ideas, opening up to the possibilities of having fun and joy of learning. And for me, it's the sciences. And that's where my husband, he was not interested at all. He's become an expert of viruses and bacteria all through gameplay. So that's what I would say the most important
Nice.
takeaway message is that really there's just such great potential to have fun.
Great. So where can people find you, find your company, reach out to you? How can they do that?
MedMicroMaps. So med is medical, microscopic maps because we guide you. We do have a website. I'm getting better at it, but we're going to be having a release in the Meta. So if you have a MetaQuest headset, we're going to be in Meta Horizons, which will be mobile. And so our website, which is www.medmicromaps.com. We also have YouTube. We're all over social media. So yeah, MedMicroMaps, you'll find us.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. I look forward to hearing more about your company in a couple of years when you get into that more just totally immersive and more viruses. Look forward to that.